Welcome to the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce's 2021 annual dinner. I want to give you all a round of applause. I want to recognize some guests. Mayor Perry was here earlier. He's at a council meeting now. Representative Linda Dean Campbell is here. We have the office of Senator Diana DeZoglu is here. And we also want to recognize our chamber staff, Mary Beth, Michael, and Rayanne, who did a great job putting this together. I get recognized, but it's them that do the work. Give them a round of applause. I want to say thank you to Lawrence Community Action Television, Access Television, and HC Media, who are taping this and will be putting this together. This will be edited and will be sent throughout the entire Merrimack Valley 10 local cable access channels. And also to the Eagle Tribune, who's here. And I want to say also, Governor, that Mayor Ferrantini is not feeling well today. He's got a cold. But he said to me, said, I want you to say just 2 words to the governor for all he's done for the city of Haverhill. And he said, thank you. So I want you to know that, Governor. And I want you to know the Chamber is working together in a partnership with United Way and the Merrimack Valley Central Labor Council with our union friends. And Tom Raish is here from the union, working along with the United Way, the Chamber, together. We have hosted 7 food drives in the Merrimack Valley, in Haverhill, Methuen, Lawrence, Andover, North Andover, and we've collected tons of food for those in need and diapers as well. And I want to say thank you to our friends at the Union and the United Way. And I want to recognize Fred Simmons, candidate for City Council. Welcome, Fred. Let me, and again, if I missed anyone, I apologize. This is the notes that I had when we got ready tonight. The title sponsor making this program possible is Haverhill Bank. Give them a round of applause, our friends over here to the right. Program sponsor, Merrimack Valley Chamber Means Business Program. And our associate sponsors, Governor, one of the new industries coming into the Merrimack Valley, Sal's going to mention it, Amazon. Give them a round of applause. Enterprise Bank. Princeton Properties Management, Inc. And TD Bank, give them a round of applause. Our friend sponsors, All Pro Electric, LCW CPAs, Lowell 5 Bank, Luke, they made the microphone tall for you, Governor, Luke Jackson Benefit HR Solutions, and Northmark Bank, give them a round of applause. And most importantly, all of you. The Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce, since COVID, during COVID lockdown period, we did 85 webinars, Zoom meetings, and then we started doing hybrid meetings, and then we started doing in-person meetings. And just a few months ago, we did a major mayor and town managers breakfast right here in this room. We have coming up on October 15th, a major public safety program with the sheriff, the district attorney, the area chiefs of police, and then on October 25, our major Women in Business Conference with Congresswoman Laurie Trahan and a panel of very distinguished business speakers. And there's a host of other activities. As you know, pre-COVID, the Merrimack Valley Chamber did 110 programs a year. And Governor, 7,000 people attended a Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce event. And someone said to me, where did you put them? I said, they didn't all come to one event. They came throughout the course of the year. So we're back on track, serving business, serving industry, and helping each and every one of you with the great help of our legislators and obviously the governor's office, the lieutenant governor. And our friend, you'll hear about him later. There's a company called, a little federal agency called SBA. Please welcome the Massachusetts director, Bob Nelson. You'll hear from him later. Before we ask Sal Lupoli to speak, our chairman, we're going to talk about one of the governor's initiatives, which was travel and tourism, a program that the governor created along with the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism and Secretary Keneally to market the state of Massachusetts. We were able to participate in that, Governor. And I want you to know that what we did is we did a restaurant assistance program. We posted pictures of their food products that they wanted, and the restaurant's absolutely free. And they got, how many views, Michael?
Nearly 100,000.
No. 200,000 views.
500,000.
No, but in all honesty, it really was. We're about 225,000 views for the restaurant review. Absolutely free to the restaurants. And we created a marketing video at 1 minute. Michael would not let me be in it, so guess who's in it? So if you turn to the right, Michael Bevilacqua, our Vice President, will introduce the tourism marketing program that we unveiled to both Secretary Keneally and Kiko, just did a program with us at Small Lake Farms. But Michael wrote that, and it was produced locally, and the person that actually filmed it for us actually does work for someone you may know. His name is Bruce Springsteen, and some of the major rock and roll stars, and he literally works with them. He's away right now doing some rock show, and we got him. But that's an example of what we try to do to help restaurants, hotels, and small businesses who shop, stay, and eat locally, one of the themes that the governor developed. I also want to mention November 10. November 10th is going to be a very solemn day for us. It's going to be the Chamber's Veterans Program Day. Sal DeFranco, a former Navy SEAL, is here. He's along with Dana, our co-chair, along with Cal Williams. And although we can't tell you the details now, when you see this, you're going to say, I have to be there. And it's going to be a completely free program, and we want to say thank you, but keep that in the back of your mind, November 10th, Veterans Program. So thank you, Sal and Dana and Cal. All right. Now, the next person that's going to speak is a bit shy, so you'll have to help him out of his shell. So he's the chairman of the board. He also has a small real estate company. When Sal and I first started working together, I've told you this story before, he won't let me say it again, but Sal started out with one building, started with one pizza store, and through the help of SBA and others, he grew and grew and grew. And I've lost track of how many millions he's now at. I think it's about 4.5 million square feet, and he employs 1,000 people in his own company. And it's just a tribute to what I think someone with vision and ambition, working together with the governor's office and others can do in our local communities. So please welcome, for a short introduction to the governor, no one believes that, Sal Lupoli.
So, first of all, I can't thank the people in this room enough for coming, certainly out in the rain, but being away from your family, maybe in some instances being away from your business, and it's super important for us to recognize that as the chamber. Secondly, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the employees of the chamber. You know, you see a lot of collateral, you see a lot of material, and it's by the tireless effort of the people that work in the chamber. You know, spearheaded by Joe, but the entire staff, I just want to give a round of applause and thank them for everything they do. You know, secondly, if I could take an additional 10 seconds and just personally thank everyone that's here from the Lupoli companies. You know, too many times I'm able to stand up in a venue like this and recognized for all the hard work that our organization's done. But that table over there is just indicative to the 1,000 employees that we have of just a sample of the hardest working people I know. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone here. I wish I could thank you all by name, but I would just want to tell you how much I appreciate your effort and the light that you allow me to be in. So thank you very much, guys. You know, we've been through hell for the last couple of years or so. And COVID has touched every single person in this room. And in some instances, the ultimate limit. In some instances, it's affected our business. But it has touched every single person in this room. And I think what is super important to recognize and realize is we're still here. We're still here in this room after going through all that trauma, all that pain. If I could just talk about the restaurant business for a second, you know, when the governor announced, and I'll never forget, it was a Thursday night, that he was going to announce that on Monday that he had made an executive decision to close down the restaurants, we immediately recognized and said, not what are we going to do for profit, or not how are our customers going to get the product that we sell. It was really the first thing. What are we going to do with our employees? How are we going to support our employees? Because when you're in the hospitality business, it's a lot of hard work and sometimes not the biggest check. These are young, hard-working individuals, all sizes, all shapes, all looks. How are we going to support them through this challenge? And my team came together and we devised an opportunity to create something super special. And we won't bore you with the details of what we did, but what we did is keep a promise that we were going to stay open, keep a promise that we were going to keep our employees. And through COVID, we're proud, I'm proud of this team, that we didn't lose one employee as a result of cutting, not one employee. And the gentleman that's in this room that we're here to listen to, I think had one of the hardest jobs of all. His job was to balance what had to stay open and what had to stay closed. And he did that not for himself, not for his family. He did that for the sake of the entire state of Massachusetts. Can you imagine the pressure that must be to make a decision that he knows was affecting people's lives? But he made that decision for two great reasons. One of them was leadership. You know, to be a great leader, you have to understand that when the ship is sailing and the water is smooth, that anybody can make a decision. Anybody can steer the ship when the water is calm. But what happens when the waves are crashing over the bow? What happens when it's the dead of night? When you can't see a foot in front of your face and you're steering that boat and you have millions and millions of people responsible for that? How hard must that decision be to make the right decision, to show great leadership? And that's what our governor did. He showed the greatest leadership that I've seen since I can remember, to make a decision of what companies needed to continue and what companies needed to slow down, so to speak. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud that his decision saved lives. I'm proud that his decision saved jobs. I'm proud that his decision took care of my family's health. And sometimes people don't appreciate that. But think of it, what a decision to make. That's leadership. And the leadership in this room, of all of these companies that I look at, I want to applaud. I want to applaud all of you, again, for keeping your business open, for taking care of your employees. The second thing that I want to remind everyone in this room is simple. How do you get motivated every day? How do you get motivated to get up every single day, especially under the duress that we all have or face, and run to work? Because that's really what you have to do. Because the alternative is what? To quit? That's not an option. You know, not only a few days ago, somebody asked me, what motivates you, Sal? How do you stay motivated? And again, I don't care what it is. I don't care what the reason is. All I care is everyone in this room gets up every single day and they run to work to support their family, to support their company, to support individuals or customers that they haven't even met yet. Sometimes people use motivation for profit, fame, pat on the back. I happen to use motivation. What motivates me is my family. I close my eyes, I see my mother, I see my father, I see my brother, I see my employees, and I say to myself, I can't let them down. That gets me out of the bed, running to work. And on my way to work, I make a promise to all my employees and my family that I'm going to work as hard as I can that day to get an inch closer to where they want to be. Because some of the people in this room, if they chose to, they would never have to work again. But they do it for one reason. They do it for their family, they do it for their friends, they do it for their employees. So with that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the gentleman that we're here for, to listen. I'm truly honored here tonight to introduce our special guest, the Governor, Charlie Baker, State of Massachusetts. During his administration, Governor Baker has continued to forge a public-private partnership to help drive economic development in the Merrimack Valley. This governor is a friend of the Merrimack Valley. This governor has repeatedly come out to the Merrimack Valley, and he's been there through the biggest crises, whether it was the gas explosions or whether it was some kind of natural disaster. He has been in the Merrimack Valley. He is our friend. He has been a key player in bringing new industries to the Merrimack Valley, including Amazon, as Joe talked about, in North Andover, Monarch Foods in Lowell, Edwards Vacuum in Haverhill, and certainly from a dear friend of mine, he's been able to do new housing developments in the Merrimack Valley, like Princeton Properties in North Andover. And we were able to do that with the governor's support. You know, it doesn't matter how big or how small you are, Charlie Baker will treat you the same way as he treats everyone, with respect, with dignity, and he will always be an incredible cheerleader for the state of Massachusetts. I am honored to introduce the Governor of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker.
Thank you, Sal. Please sit. Thank you. I can't tell you how much fun it is to walk into a room and to see a whole bunch of faces in person that I haven't seen for a really long time. And on some level, it's one of those things where you're not really sure how much you miss it until you actually have a chance to see it again. And over the course of the past few weeks, both the Lieutenant Governor and I have had a chance to get out and about a bit, and have had a chance to spend time with people and remember why it was that we liked these jobs in the first place. Because it's always been about that chance to be out talking to people about what's going on in their communities and what we can do, working with our colleagues in the legislature and with folks in local government and with private enterprise to create, imagine, and make great and better. And it really does feel like the last 18 months or so, there's been some offense in it, but there's been a lot of playing defense. And a lot of that defense has been about COVID. And so I'm gonna give you a quick snapshot on how I think about COVID in sort of like 3 acts, okay? And I've always thought about the first act of COVID as kind of a scramble. Didn't know much about it. A lot of the information we were getting was mixed. A lot of the guidance and direction was muddled. Nobody had enough of anything in terms of what they needed to actually manage it and deal with it and protect themselves. And that led to things like the governor of the Commonwealth spending a big part of his time just calling all sorts of people that I knew who lived and worked in Massachusetts but had global reach and global relationships, trying to find somebody who could get me access to PPE, because we didn't have enough PPE for anybody. We didn't have enough for the folks in the hospitals. We didn't have enough for the folks in long-term care. We didn't have enough for the folks who were first responders. We just didn't have enough, period. And the feds didn't have enough to help back up what the states didn't have. And I've talked before about the fact that we had an order. We worked with BJ's wholesalers to get an order, 3 million masks that were supposed to come into the Port of New York, and this was in early March, sort of mid-March-ish, and they disappeared in the Port of New York. Force majeure, the federal government basically kind of took them. And that was when I realized just how hard this was going to be. Now, eventually I got a hold of somebody in China who got me access to masks, but having had my first experience with the federal government in the Port of New York, I knew I couldn't actually use a commercial approach to get these things here, so I called the Crafts and I asked them if I could borrow the Patriots plane to go to China to pick them up. Private plane, chartered, and then I had to figure, and they said yes, God bless them, right? So then question number 2 was, well, how am I going to get them in and out without having the feds do to me again what they did to BJ's wholesalers? So I called the governor of Alaska, who's a friend of mine, Republican basketball player. He's got all the right credentials. Had family in Massachusetts, and I said, can we use you as our pivot point to get in and out of the U.S.? And he said, sure. And I said, you'll like protect the plane on the way in, protect the plane on the way out, make sure that nobody screws with what's on it. And he said yes. So in late March, that plane flew quietly out of Providence, landed in Anchorage, got refueled. They followed all the rules associated with rest and everything while the Alaskan State Police were hanging out around it. Then it flew to China. 3 hours on the ground, that's all it was allowed. 3 hours on the ground, you couldn't open the doors. Nobody could come on the plane, nobody could get off the plane, just load the gear into the belly of the plane and then come back to Alaska. Comes back to Alaska, back in the airport, on the ground there, watched over by the Alaskan state troopers, went through all the stuff they needed to do to be back in the country and rest before they could fly. And then they flew to Boston, and we met them on the tarmac with the National Guard and the state police, because I wasn't taking any chances. And then they eventually came in, and that was the first of what ultimately were 6 more of these trips that we made with chartered flights back and forth. Millions and millions and millions of pieces of PPE, gowns, gloves, coveralls, masks. And then eventually, of course, the crank got cranking on this stuff, but then the whole issue around testing, we had tons of work to do to build out our testing infrastructure, which went from literally, a few hundred and a few thousand in early March to the point where we were doing 80 or 90,000 tests a day by the time you got into the summer, and even 100,000 on some days in the fall of 2020. So the first part of this was really just a mad scramble to try and figure out how to get our arms around what we knew and what we didn't know, and then do what we needed to keep people safe. And in that situation, given how much we didn't know and the rising issue with respect to hospitalizations, we went from literally almost nobody with COVID in the hospital in mid-March of 2020 to having 4,000 people in the hospital at the same time with COVID by the middle of April. Like 30, 35, 40 days. 4,000 beds, that's 40% of the hospital capacity in Massachusetts before the curve started to bend. So a lot of those really draconian decisions that we made were all about trying to deal with the fact that we had a number that was just going like this, and I was terrified it was going to push all sorts of other treatable healthcare circumstances and situations out because of the avalanche that was just coming in the front door with COVID. Now, eventually that number started to come down, and then that brought us to part 2, which was how do we reopen and reopen safely? And that took place in May. So, I mean, I look back on this, and I really like the first decision about restaurants, that was like March 14th, and the decision to reopen, the date of the reopening was May 18th, 60 days. I don't know about you, but it seemed like about 60 years to me when we went through it. I mean, every day was like one day that just lasted the entire 2-month period. And the big concern when we opened back up was we didn't want to see a rebound in the case counts, as we finally gotten to the point where there was a little breathing room across the healthcare community. And what was interesting is because people were so willing to work and collaborate around rules and guidance and advisories and all the rest, unlike many states where when they reopened they had a sudden resurgence in cases, we didn't see that. And we actually had a relatively quiet, and I would argue successful reopening. And then we all went back inside in the fall, and the second surge arrived, which is exactly what happened with the flu back in 1918, and everybody said it would come. And while it was rough and difficult and challenging, and for many people tragic, it didn't pack anywhere near the punch the first round did, and that was because by that point we had our testing infrastructure in place, and people understood the things they needed to do, and we had PPE everywhere we needed it, and we'd put a ton of resources and guidance and advice and support into our long-term care community. And a lot of the things we did meant that it was rough, but it was nowhere near as rough as the first wave. Thanksgiving created its own mini surge coming out of it. No matter how hard we tried to say to people that maybe getting together with 20 of your family and friends on Thanksgiving and sharing food and hugging and do all that sort of thing was probably not a great idea. People are human, and they did it. And then we had to deal with what came out of that. And then phase 3 was basically the race to vaccinate, right? Which started in late December. And, that was an incredibly challenging exercise for a lot of reasons, because all of a sudden many people knew there was something there that could protect them. And they wanted it now. And we had a phase to this. We wanted to start with the folks in long-term care, both the residents and the staff. We wanted to start with the folks who worked in healthcare. We wanted to start with first responders. We wanted to start with all those people who had been the ones who, basically saved our behinds in the spring, to go first. And then we wanted to go with the folks over the age of 75, and then the folks over the age of 65, and folks with comorbidities. And honestly, I completely understood why people were frustrated with the fact that there was a process here and a set of rules and a guidance and all the rest. Because I knew how anxious people were to get protected. Now, by the middle of March, so it's 1 year from the time this whole thing started, we had the highest vaccination rate per capita of any state in the country with more than 5 million people. And that number has just continued to grow since then. We're at the point now where 90% of all those over the age of 18 have had at least one dose. 99% of everybody over the age of 65. We are, in many respects, as well positioned with respect to our vaccination rate as anything you're going to find pretty much anywhere in the country. And that's made it possible for us since the month of June to basically be pretty much fully open. And yes, we continue to have cases of COVID. And yes, people continue to end up in the hospital. But it's nothing like it was a year ago. It's nothing like it was before people were vaccinated. And I say to people all the time, whatever you think about the vaccinations, the simple fact is this. The states with high vaccination rates have lower case counts per capita, lower hospitalizations per capita, and lower deaths per capita. And the states with low vaccination rates have higher cases per capita, higher hospitalizations per capita, higher death rates per capita. That's what the data says, whatever you think about it. It is, in fact, the fastest way to get everybody back to what they want most of all, which is their ability to live their lives, be with their colleagues, be with their friends, be with their families, and have some sense of confidence that they are safe. And that is in many ways where the flywheel associated with the economy comes from. The hardest part about coming out of this is I never realized how much the economy runs on velocity. It runs on the fact that it's constantly moving. And when you stop it, which is what we've been doing in different parts of the world, depending upon where they were with respect to COVID and the variants and all the rest, it takes a while. It doesn't just start going like this all over again, which is why you have so many businesses that are looking for people to fill jobs. It's why you have so many people who are trying to figure out where their customers are coming from and how they're going to serve them. And it's why so much of this isn't just snap your fingers and it all goes back to the way it was. The other thing that's happened is a lot of things about the way people work, how they work, where they work, when they work, has changed, which has really profound impacts for many industries, not just here in the Commonwealth, but around the country, which is one of the reasons why we asked our colleagues in the legislature, it's good to see you, Representative, to spend about $240 million on reskilling, credentialing, job training, rapid reemployment. We did a future of work study, and there's no question that a lot of things that people used to assume and presume about work have changed. Some of them will go back to the way they were, but a lot of things probably will never be the same. And that means a whole bunch of people who depended on the old way for their employment and their wages and their ability to pay their bills and all the rest are going to have to find a new one. And we're not going to be able to do it by spending dimes and quarters. We're going to have to spend real money on real programming to help folks find a new skill and a new way to play and participate and succeed in an economy that's completely different. And I'll give you two really simple examples. I spoke this morning at the International Air Transport Association's annual meeting, which was awesome because, first of all, it was mostly in person. They have 900 registrants, 700 of them were here in Boston, another 200 participating virtually. They were from all over the world, and they filled up 3 hotels in downtown Boston. And there was a huge room full of them when I stood up and spoke in front of them. But when you talk to them about their business, they say the tourist stuff, the family vacations, the trips here, the trips there, sort of domestic travel, booming. Everybody's trying to go someplace to see somebody that they haven't been able to see for the previous 18 months. But the business travel stuff, global travel stuff, still very much not where it was, and who knows when it will come back. Now, they're great to they're really excited about the fact they have people in their seats, right? But that business travel thing, people have discovered you can do a lot of things virtually that you used to think you had to go from place to place to do. So what does that mean for all the people who work in the convention business, or all the people who work in the hotel space or the restaurant space that was driven and fundamentally served the business traveler? Maybe at some point it'll get back to where it was, but when you talk to most people about it, most people think, yes, it will come back, but it will never be quite what it was before. Because people have figured out they can do a lot of things virtually that they used to think they had to do in person. And the other thing that happened is people who used to travel 4 or 5, 6 days a week, or 8 or 10 or 12 days a month, have suddenly discovered, you know what, I actually kind of like my family. My God, I like being home. And by the way, I can talk to all these people virtually. Maybe I go see them once a month instead of 3 times a month. Or maybe I go see them twice a year instead of once a quarter. And maybe when I go, I just take 1 or 2 people with me instead of 5 or 6. Because we can save a lot of money on T&E when we do that too. And there's definitely going to be a major issue that we're all facing around housing, and I'm glad you brought it up, Sal. We announced our housing proposal that we made to the legislature back in May in Haverhill. And it's a $1 billion initiative around housing of all kinds: senior housing, supported housing, workforce housing, affordable housing, home ownership. We have not built enough housing to serve the people of the Commonwealth for 3 decades. And what happens then? What happens when there's no supply and a ton of demand? The price of what you have goes up a lot. Does anybody have children who are trying to buy a house? My oldest and his wife now live in Virginia. Now, they were there before, but they took one look at what was going on in the housing market here and said, I love you, Dad, but I don't love you that much. Is anybody here from Amazon?
Yes.
I've heard of Amazon. Books. You guys do books. Is that right? That's great. That's really great. You got a book company up here. So when Amazon did their second headquarters, right? Where's the second headquarters off the West Coast going to be here in the East Coast? And every state in America came up with, 50 different proposals for where they wanted HQ2 to go, including, many people here in Massachusetts. And we made a whole bunch of proposals. And they narrowed us down to one of like the 6 or 7 states they were looking at, and there were 2 or 3 places in particular. And I have no idea if you guys just did this because it was a great opportunity to suck up a ton of marketing data about every state in America. And if that's what you did it for, that was brilliant because it was free for you. You didn't have to pay anybody for it. We did all the work. But the interesting thing was when they came to Massachusetts, right, and they looked around, and they said 2 things. Number one, boy, you have a huge number of incredibly smart and really talented and great people. And number 2, you don't have enough housing for what you have now, and you don't seem to understand that that is driving the price of your housing through the moon, and that's going to be a big issue because a lot of the folks we're going to want to hire are going to be working people who are going to be able to need to find a place they can afford to live. Now, here's the kicker on this, the epilogue to this story. Because all that basically I don't disagree with, which is why we put $1 billion on the table before the legislature and why we've spent more money on housing production in the past 7 years than any administration in state history. It came down in the end. Remember, we were too expensive for housing. And in the end, what did it come down to? New York City, which was their first choice, and the metropolitan area around Washington, D.C., which is where they ended up going. Now, I'm sorry, folks. Most people think those are like two of the most expensive housing markets in the world. But hey, they were cheaper than Massachusetts. This is the single biggest nut for most people, their rent or their mortgage. It is the thing that makes Massachusetts feel like a stretch when they're trying to figure out how to pay the bills and make things work. And we have not done our job for decades in terms of understanding and accepting the fact that we need to build more housing of every kind. People say to me, what kind of housing do you want? I want it all. Everything. You can't come up with a housing element that I don't think we need more of. And that's why we put $1 billion on the table to support this. And it's $1 billion that's actually sitting in the bank. It was part of the federal funding that we got. It was attached to COVID reopening. And housing is absolutely 100% consistent with what the feds want to see us spend this money on. But we are housing, there's no issue I can think of that's going to be a greater challenge for us over the long term than this one. And everybody who owns a house, like me, my wife and I, we've lived in the same place for 30 years, okay? And I know what it would cost for somebody to buy our house. And it's a boatload more than we paid for it. Now, 30 years is a long time. That would make sense, right? But what the average price of an average house in sort of all of eastern Massachusetts, it's like $500,000. How many 20-somethings, even how many 30-somethings? You can buy a house that costs $500,000. We have work to do on this one. And I really hope we get it done. And I hope we get it done as part of this issue we have with respect to this federal funding. And the final thing I'm going to mention, then I'll stop. We also put a significant amount of money around environmental infrastructure into our proposal to the legislature. Now, you here in the Merrimack Valley know better than anybody else that our water and sewer systems are not serving you the way they should. I mean, how much rain have we had in the past 3 months? Like more than ever? And what has that meant with respect to raw sewage getting dumped into the Merrimack River? Millions and millions of gallons into that beautiful body of water that should be the pride of the Merrimack Valley. And the big issue is always, well, we don't have the resources. It's so hard to come up with the resources to pay for this. Well, guess what? Now we have them. But we have to put them to work. And it's not just an issue here for you. It's an issue in Greater Boston with CSO issues, and it's an issue on the South Shore. We have a chance to do something spectacular for some of the most precious bodies of water we have that are a critical element of how we think about where we live and what we benefit from. And you know the other thing you get out of it if you fix this stuff is you get resilience. Because whatever you think about climate and whatever you think about climate policy, we are going to be dealing with more storms that are more intense. Even if we turned everything around on a dime tomorrow, And the intensity of those storms and the frequency of those storms is just going to create more issues around raw sewage getting dumped into places it doesn't belong, and floodings in downtowns and neighborhoods across the Commonwealth. And guess what? This is another one where we can make enormous progress. How many are old enough to remember the Fram oil filter guy?
I do.
You can pay me now, you can pay me later, right? I'll leave you one final statistic. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, which pays for the rebuild after natural disasters, which basically rebuilds back to the way things were before the disaster, they spent more money in the previous 3 years than they spent in the previous 30. Now, why would that be? Because there were more natural disasters, and they were more intense and more severe in the past 3 years than there were in the previous 30. And they'd be the first to tell you, talk to a farmer, talk to a fishing community, talk to a resort operator, talk to anybody for whom weather and climate matters, and they'll tell you it's a different game. And here too, we have a huge opportunity to make your community more resilient, our Commonwealth more resilient, so that we will be better prepared to be spending our money on our future and not on the things we didn't fix in the past. And let me just close by saying this. In the midst of all this craziness over the past few years, the thing I appreciate the most, the thing I admire most, and the thing I'm most grateful for is the thousands and thousands of acts of kindness and decency and humanity that my wife and I both saw up close and personal over and over and over and over again. It was amazing. My wife raised $35 million for a COVID relief fund, all private money, 17,000 donors, a lot of it nickels and dimes and dollars, and a lot of it bigger numbers than that. But it was all for communities outside Greater Boston, because Greater Boston had their own foundation. They raised about 30. She wanted to raise money for the rest of Massachusetts. And it was astonishing how people stood up and supported this. And it paid for meals. It paid for utility bills. It paid for car payments. It paid for all sorts of things. The people in the midst of this craziness just didn't have the resources on their own. You're an incredibly generous community. Social media, if you go on it, you'd believe that we're all terrible people. We're not. You're not. This is a wonderful state. It's filled with beautiful people who look out for their neighbors, stand up for their friends, and when asked to help, always, always say yes. And you should be so proud of that, because I'll tell you something, I sure am. Thank you.
Give the governor another round of applause. Now we come to the awards. We're going to do 3 awards, and each so well-deserving. The first award, the Wilkinson Award recipient, is Pfizer. Let me tell you just very, very brief about Pfizer, and we're going to call up 2 representatives of Pfizer. When we've done the Wilkinson Award in the past, it's usually been for a local person or company. That local person or company may have had a regional influence, but not really a national influence. Certainly not an international influence. When we discussed the Wilkinson Award, which is our highest award of the year, it was unanimous that we would pick someone that had an international impact upon the lives of millions and millions and millions of people. And to my experience, we've never had that discussion before. So the choice was very simple. Andover-based Pfizer. Please welcome to the podium Amy Lavaska, who is the Andover Pfizer Global Supply Site Leader, and welcome Meg Roche, the Andover R&D Site Leader. Pfizer saving the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Come on up. I think you can stand for Pfizer. Okay, are you all set? Are you all set? Amy, you first. Please welcome Amy Lavassa.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity.
Hold that down. Okay.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity. So we want to say thank you on behalf of Pfizer and our team in Andover, as well as across our network. It's been an absolute privilege to work on medicine that's made such a difference. The work that we do day in, day out on the develop and manufacture of the COVID vaccine has just been, just absolutely amazing. So I want to say thank you and appreciate the community. So without the support of the community, the local business partners, and across the network, we sincerely appreciate all of the support that we've had. So thank you.
And Meg Welsh from Pfizer.
I'll just echo Amy's thanks. It's, of course, been a highlight of our career to, on behalf of all of us at Andover Pfizer, to be involved with such an important project and ending our pandemic, and we just really want to appreciate the community as well. I just wanted to say that one of the unique things about the Pfizer Andover site is we have both a research and development function as well as a manufacturing function, and that's really one of the reasons why that facility was chosen to make a critical part of the vaccine. So it's only through all the talented scientists, engineers, and colleagues that we've been able to move quickly with quality and make a vaccine that we're all very proud of. So thanks very much, and we appreciate your thanks as well.
And let me tell you how modest they were. When I spoke to Amy first about the idea of being the Wilkinson recipient, it was as if they did nothing special. And I said, you saved hundreds of millions of lives. And they said, that's what we're supposed to do. Give them another round of applause. I'd like to call up Michael Bevilacqua, the Chamber Vice President, who will introduce the Emerging Leader Award, which is a program designed for young people in business. Please welcome Michael.
Hello, everyone. As Joe said, my name is Mike Bevilacqua, the Vice President of the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you all for joining us here tonight. I want to thank the Governor for his leadership. I want to thank Pfizer, who is our first award recipient, for all they did. Without them, we wouldn't be able to be here tonight, so thank you very much. And I want to thank Bob Nelson with the SBA, who will be getting an award shortly. But right now, I have the honor of welcoming and honoring our Emerging Leader Award recipient. The Merrimack Valley Chambers Committee looks for someone who's continues to rise up in the ranks, who continues to give back to his community, and we couldn't think of anyone better for this year, 2021, than Evan Silverio, who started off as just with Silverio Insurance. Now he's the president and CEO of Silverio Insurance Agency. So without any further ado, I would welcome to congratulate and welcome Evan Silverio.
I think there's a proud mother in the audience, isn't there?
Joe gave me the option of talking, so I'll exercise that right now. Appreciate it, Joe. One, thank you to the Chamber for thinking of me for this award. I know that there are a lot of people in this room tonight that are equally deserving. I'm still considered young, so thank you again. It's not every day you get the opportunity to talk to 100+ people, so I want to thank a few people that are in the room tonight. First, to my lovely staff, Silverio Insurance Agency, I can't do it without you. Some of which are here today, thank you so much. To my parents and my sister, who's in the audience today, thank you guys. You guys truly led by example every single day, and I followed that, so thank you. And lastly, to my wife, Carrie, thank you. You know, you put up with me getting up early every single morning and coming back late and all the meetings and all the events, and you never complained once, and you know, I say this to you all the time, but I greatly appreciate it, and yeah, I love you. Thank you. Bye. Thank you again.
His mother was a recipient of the Women in Business Program Award several years ago. The Women in Business Recognition Award will be presented at the Chamber's Women in Business Conference on October 25. Now, the Business Assistance Award recipient, I don't know if there's anybody that has not heard the initials SBA. And let me tell you, Governor, one thing that many people don't know is that during the COVID shutdown and during the period of rebuilding, the governor's office and Secretary Michael Keneally, the Economic Development Secretary, and the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development joined in conference calls every week with the SBA Director, and Mass Growth Capital is also here. And they provided direct information, not hearsay, but direct information as to what we can do to help small businesses. Bob Nelson was on every one of those calls, as was Secretary Keneally. The governor joined in once in a while. The lieutenant governor joined in. Secretary Acosta talking about the issues of unemployment and workforce opportunities. But Bob Nelson, the SBA, provided literally, in fact, Bob, I forgot how many zillions of dollars you've provided in the local economy. But the SBA, through the PPP, through the EIDL, through the Restaurant Recovery Program, and others, kept the state moving forward along with the governor's initiatives. And there was a true, this is something that you don't see when you watch TV, but a true partnership of the state and federal government. I think you'll agree, Governor. Between the SBA and the governor's offices made things happen for small businesses during our darkest period. Please welcome a person who has never been a stranger to this chamber, who was here back in June. Please welcome the Massachusetts District Director of the United States Small Business Administration, the Business Assistance Award recipient, Bob Nelson. Here we go again.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you, Joe and the Chamber, for this recognition of the Massachusetts SBA. I can tell you that the last 19 months, it certainly has been humbling for all of us at my office, my team. What you need to think is that the SBA, we are a small agency, but we were tasked with delivering a huge amount of capital to try to help small businesses to recover and to survive this pandemic. And, you know, with me, I have 11 other people helping to deliver the programs across the Commonwealth. And it's pretty amazing when you think of it, that through the PPP program, $21 billion worth of money. Through all the other programs, the SVOG, the Restaurant Revitalization Grant Program, our EIDL loan program, and combined those recovery programs, $28 to $29 billion. But over the last 19 months, yes. But over the last 19 months, the SBA, our regular loan programs, have been active in trying to get capital out to businesses who are starting and trying to grow jobs and who are expanding. And I can tell you that over the last year, through our regular 7A program and our 504 program, we did close to $1 billion. You know, so this is just huge dollars. But I appreciate. You know, Joe stole my thunder. I wanted to recognize Governor Baker and the administration, you know, absolutely, you know, the work that we did with Secretary Keneally and the collaboration and the cooperation in order to make sure that small businesses knew firsthand of all these different programs, how to access them, how to get their issues and problems solved. So I certainly wanted to give kudos to the Commonwealth and all the work that you've done to help the SBA to get our message out there. But again, on behalf of the entire SBA team, thank you for the recognition. And Sal, always good to see you. But there are so many lenders in the room here today, and you know, so I want to thank the lenders because it's you that helped put the dollars on the street. It was the SBA's program, but it was through all of your hard work. So if I can get some recognition and applause for all the lenders who are in the room tonight. We still have a lot of work to go. You know, the emails and the phone calls keep coming, but it's nice to be here and to get recognized for the Massachusetts SBA. So thank you all.
You see the dinner is being served. I want to recognize Ray Roble, the chairman of the Board of Health, to make sure everything is fine for you to have your dinner. Please enjoy your dinner, and then we'll do our raffle at the end, but we want to say thank you. Please give the award recipients another round of applause.